Hi guys, welcome back. Today's tutorial will be based on forearm balance and pincha mayurasana. So for those of you who ask me online, like how do I learn this pose? How do I go about getting into this pose? What do I do if I'm a beginner but I want to learn? This will be based on how to prepare for the posture and how to use some props like the block and strap to help you get used to being in this position with the arms and the upper back, and how to possibly kick up if you're ready. So before we begin, make sure you're already warmed up. Do some sun salutations, get the hamstrings warmed up, the upper back, do some downward facing dog, and warm up the core as well. However you want to warm it up, if you want to do just holding plank pose, or if you want to draw the knee in towards the chest, you can do some of these, lower the leg to hover, draw it back in. Anything to fire up that core. You can play around with lifting the toes up, holding it for several breaths. Anything to warm up that core to help create stability in the pose. The warmer the core, the easier it will be to potentially stay up once you try to kick the legs up. You can work on opening up the shoulders with a few poses too as you do your sun salutations. You can come into a modified version of Shalabhasana, locust pose. So if you were working on low cobra, staying here for a few breaths, you can join the fingers together, interlacing the hands or the knuckles, reaching the knuckles towards the heels, lifting the chest, breathing here, maybe guiding the palms to touch, maybe lifting toes, reaching through the toes as you open up the chest, still guiding the knuckles back. Staying here for a few breaths. Another variation would be to come to a forward fold. And here we're opening up the backs of the legs, which is good. Lifting the sit bones up as we interlace the hands and draw the knuckles overhead. And as you continue to breathe on your exhale, you'll start to lengthen the torso down, drawing the crown of the head down. And breathing. Staying here for a few breaths. And then you can also do a prone shoulder opener where you're laying on your belly. And I'll expand first my right arm out, palm facing down, spreading through the fingers. I'll start to rotate onto my right side, keeping my head and neck down. And I'll bring my left foot behind my right knee to face up towards the ceiling. And this is a pretty common place to stop. A lot of shoulders are comfortable with just going here. If your shoulders are more open, you can start to draw the sacrum down towards the floor as you bring the right foot to join the left, both knees facing up towards the ceiling. Staying here for several breaths, keeping that right palm grounded down into the mat, into the floor. You can take that left arm up and overhead, reaching for the hands and interlacing. But keeping in mind that as you go slowly out of it, that can be really deep. So making sure you go step by step and only going to the point that your body's comfortable going to. So yeah, try those things, as well as downward facing dog will open up the shoulders, of course. So if you are ready, have a block handy. If you don't have a block, it's not mandatory. It's just a helpful way to see where to put the hands. And if you have a strap, loop up that strap once around the buckle, and then make it about shoulder to shoulder distance apart. It doesn't have to be perfect. We can change it later once it's around the arms. So have that off to the side. And to begin, we'll start with downward facing dog. Starting to open up the upper back and the hamstrings. So we want the thoracic spine, the upper part of the back, the shoulders, as well as the backs of the legs to be open. So starting here, taking a few breaths, spreading through the fingers, reaching the hips up and back, and lengthening the spine. So not ducking or diving too deep with the chest. We want to lengthen back out, letting the shoulders release away from the ears. This is really important too as we come into our prep for inversions. And taking a few more breaths. And then coming back onto the knees, the shins. At my teacher training, they said that if you are able to hold a downward facing dog for 1 minute, then you would be ready to practice inversions. I guess it's just a gauge to see if your upper body is strong enough to hold you up, if you're comfortable in the pose, and it might start to feel more so like a resting pose instead of being effort, even though it's a fully engaged pose. But as you continue to progress, downward dog might get easier. And so the next pose we will work on is Dolphin Pose, where we will start to use our props. So taking the strap around the upper arm bones, you'll place it right above the elbows. And you'll feel you can kind of cause some tension to see if the arms are too splayed out. That feels pretty good. I can always tighten it back up once I am down on the floor. So I'll take the strap, just set the end off to the side. And then I'll take my block and I'll place my thumb and index finger like an L shape around the corners of the block, and I'll spread my fingers. I'll place this down, let the hands come down, still spreading through the fingers, creating that L shape with each hand around the corner of the block, setting my arms down. So I'll start to scoot my elbows slightly in and then rotate the forearms down onto the ground to really spread the elbows and open up across the chest. So my elbows don't splay out here, that's why we're using the strap. So it helps us from not guiding the elbows out too far. And we'll start to lift the hips up. You can take the feet wide, you can bend the knees. More importantly, creating length in the spine. Instead of having the roundness in the back, we want to reach the hips up and away from the hands. The strap might get in the way of the head, and that's okay. You can keep the gaze going forward. Without the strap, you'd let the head come down and through the arms. We're starting to work here. And then as we press down into the forearms, we lift the chest, open up the heart, and draw the shoulders away from the ears. So we don't want to be hiked in like this. We want to open and create space on the sides of the neck. And breathing here. And you can set the knees back down, taking a child's pose, maybe taking the strap off for now, setting it off to the side, letting the head and neck come down. Relaxing the upper back and head, taking a full breath in. And as you exhale, release. You can try that again, placing the hands around the block like we began in the first round. And then curling toes under, lifting knees, and then this time you can start to bring the gaze through. And this is only in Dolphin Pose, so we wouldn't come up like this initially into our forearm balance. This is just to let the head and neck relax while we're here. And still pressing down into the forearms, rooting down into the forearms and hands as you reach up through the shoulders, lifting the hips up still. And still breathing. And setting the knees back down. You can take another child's pose. Always important to rest while you work on this. Letting the head and neck relax again. You can bend the elbows, bringing the palms together, letting the thumbs come back towards the neck to open up the triceps. And as we come up, traditionally, you will start with the hands down. This is how I first learned using the block and strap to keep my elbows guided in. I often do forearm balance now with my hands interlaced, and I tuck the bottom pinky under to keep it a flat surface. This is more comfortable for my body. It's a little bit easier on my shoulders and my chest, but I recommend trying both ways first and seeing what works best for you. But for the sake of this video, I will keep my hands like this in this position. Having a wall behind us, this is really important as we begin, especially with all these props. It's very hard to come out of this pose safely and not hurt ourselves if we twist out. Like in handstand, it's really easy to cartwheel out. But here, it's very important to have the wall so that if we were to lose our balance, fall over, it'll safely catch us and we can just come back down. Now take that strap around the arms. Make sure the buckle isn't touching the skin. You can tighten it up if it needs a little bit more stability. We want to make sure that elbows are in line with the shoulders so they're not splaying out. So help protect the shoulders, keep us more aligned. So finding that space where you can open up the arms and resist against the band so it's still keeping us supported. Then taking that block again, making the L shape with the hands, and starting in stages. So most importantly, we want to stack the hips over the shoulders so that we find that alignment. If the hips are too far back from the shoulders, we won't be able to get up because the weight's going to be pulling us back down. So once the hips are over the shoulders, then we find that stacking, it'll be a lot easier to stay up. We want to hug the belly button in towards the spine and lift from the pelvic floor using the bandhas. So what that means, for lack of a better description, it's that action as if you were stopping your P flow. So you're going to draw the energy up through the pelvic floor, engaging those muscles and then drawing the navel in. So those two actions will help us create stability in the torso and in the trunk. So if it is not engaged, we'll feel a lot heavier, a lot looser. So with that lift, it'll create a lightness in the body. So making that L shape around the block. Placing the forearms down. I'm going to actually tighten my strap up a little bit more because once I placed my arms down, I could feel that the elbows were coming out a little bit. Placing the arms down, coming into Dolphin Pose. Pressing down into the forearms, spreading the fingers, and I'll start with my legs, maybe a little bit further back. Finding my alignment, maybe starting to walk my feet in. And I keep my chest open, broaden across my collarbones, keeping my gaze towards my thumbs. I'll bring my feet together, lifting one leg up, keeping the toes down, keeping hips level, switching sides. Still pressing down into the forearms, into the hands, then lowering down. Then choosing first your side that's more dominant, more comfortable to come up. Bending one knee, the foot that's touching the ground, keeping that lifted leg active. Pressing down, looking forward. Starting to take a couple kicks. Keeping the legs active and engaged, making that L shape with the legs. And then taking one more. If you find balance, you can keep the legs split, but keeping them really engaged. The quads are active and lifted. Kneecaps lifted. Opening up across the chest still. I'm just gazing forward. I'm hugging my navel in towards my spine. And maybe you can play around with guiding the feet together. Still pointing through the toes, keeping the feet active. And breathing. When you're ready, slowly come back down, splitting the legs. Lowering one foot down, then the other. And it's important to take rest, so taking a child's pose, resting the upper body, the spine. And of course, you can come and try it again. It's going to take a little while for you to possibly find that stacking of the hips over the shoulders and build up that strength in the upper body. Chaturangas are great for this, keeping that chest open and lowering down with control and feeling really steady in that pose. So just working on opening up the back, the shoulders, and then keeping that engagement in the upper chest and opening up across the collarbones as you look forward and pressing down into everything that's touching the floor. So as you continue to work on that, it'll get easier and easier slowly as you continue to practice. It's easier now for me to kick up, so I might make it look a little easier than it might feel once you try doing it. So just keep at it and keep practicing and it will get easier. Make sure you do both legs. I am guilty of only practicing on one leg as I began, and my now husband told me that my muscles on the right side of my spine were visibly larger than my left because I was constantly working that side of my body. So make sure you balance out both sides. And of course, if you guys have questions after this, you can comment me below. If you have any further questions that might have came up when you were doing the video, and make sure to click like if you want to see more videos like this and subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Thank you guys.